Welcome to the Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting for March 19th, 2013. We'll begin the meeting as we always do with the pledge to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pullen, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Galloway?
Here.
Mr. Snipes?
Here.
Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Rocco?
Here. Okay, thank you. We have Mrs. Rukoff, our finance director, sitting in this evening for Mr. Gray, our manager. He is away at a conference, and so we thank her for stepping in here as a substitute. Thank you very much. All right, a couple names on the list. First is Roland Kenny.
Roland Kenny, Falls Township. Mr. Gray, you never look so good. And Mr. Galloway, I'll start with you. Saturday, I went to parade. Do you still run it?
Yes.
You do? Because I didn't see you or your brother.
I did.
Yeah, well, typically you don't necessarily march in the parade if you're in it. I think. You know.
Why not?
Yeah, I'm at the staging area and then come down first to the grandstand.
Your younger brother wasn't there.
I saw him. I don't know. You know.
You didn't see him either?
I saw him. Yeah,
Did you?
there. Yeah.
Was he there? He must have snuck by me. Did see Jim, the lieutenant governor. I think even, well, you two gentlemen. Where was your dad, Mr. Snipes?
My father was not feeling well. Cold, snowy
You probably
day
gave
for
him
a
that.
95-year-old carriage driver.
Yeah, you probably gave him that. Were you there?
Absolutely.
I seen your face. Someone told me the other day you looked like that young Republican that ran for vice president.
Wow, full of insults tonight, aren't you?
Yeah, where's Roland Kenny? What did you do with his body?
You're giving everybody a hard time.
I don't know. Anything else I forgot? Guido? I don't think I have much tonight. I still haven't seen, oh, I can't holler at Gray, he ain't here. I'll get him. Have a nice, we have a new Pope, Pope Francis.
Right.
Used my middle name, so he's okay.
Okay. All right.
I'll bless you for him. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay.
SOB.
Off to a roaring start today. All right. Mr. Robert, you're next.
You like that?
Yes.
You have to read the hat,
Okay.
and then you can smile, you know. That's for sure. Gallows Herbert, Falls Township. I was reviewing the meeting from last month, and I totally agree with Mr. Mariani. $60,000 is too much money for a pier to go fishing. We've been fishing in this county, in this state, for what, 200-300 years without a pier? Why do we have to spend $60,000 of taxpayer money for maybe 3, 4, or 5 people? Okay? We built a ramp. I don't know how many people have used that yet, but probably not more than 100 max. So I agree with him. We don't like the way you're spending our money, and we're allowed to say that. On tonight's agenda, item 2 and 3. One is a stipulation between Vikings and Falls on a tax map parcel. Okay, so I gather Viking owns that. And come along, item 3, consider adopting revising code 2097 rezoning certain lands from AQ, which is age qualified, to high-density residential townhouse. Wouldn't have to be the same one as it's in item 2, would it?
Yes, correct.
So we get an agreement from Viking that they're going to do certain things, and then we come along and we change the land so that he can build. That's what I see.
Correct.
I don't like that either. But you guys sit up there. One lady asked me a couple times, she says, they don't say anything. There's no discussion. Why? I said, you'll have to come to the meeting and you're going to have to ask them all. And I'm sorry, but gentlemen, but I don't agree with everything you're doing, but then of course I don't sit on the board. The people of the township put you on the board, and this is what they get. They'll probably add more traffic to that road. Was it West Trenton Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah, West Trenton Avenue. So that's my thoughts for tonight. Okay, I'll be back next time with some more, I'm sure. It's easy to do.
Okay, thank you. Bill Dayton?
Hey, good evening, Bill Dayton, Falls Township. Mr. Harvey, if you could refrain from tapping on the microphone while I'm talking, I'd appreciate that too. And I'm not here to get under your skin right away, like some people have said in the past, but I'm all for the live meetings. We missed a meeting he forgot to mention, you probably meant to mention. You said you're going to piggyback at some time. Meeting was missing in January or something?
Yeah, there was a meeting, it was, I think maybe the first meeting of the year. We
Yeah, technical difficulty or something.
Right.
And you said you're going to piggyback on top of another meeting. The Courier Times did a nice little story about the meeting, but we'd like to see it, you know? And he'd like to see it too.
Well, I believe it was piggybacked for a
It
while.
was?
I believe Mr. Gray said it was piggybacked at some point.
Oh, I missed it. How about that? Anyway, about 16 months ago, I asked you about the bridge behind the St. Michael School, and you said you're going to have somebody take a look at it. I was wondering if you ever did. That little bridge that nobody knows about?
Bridge behind St. Michael's?
I'm sorry, St. Joseph the Worker. I said St. Mike. St. Joseph the Worker. There's a little bridge back here in the woods.
Right.
The cars fly over it.
Right.
There's no signage, there's nothing. You said you're going to...
It's not our bridge, it's St. Joseph the Workers, I believe. I know we looked at it because it came up when...
The traffic goes back and forth. It's not a safe bridge. You said you're going to have somebody take a peep at it. There's no signage, no lights, nothing. The kids are always hanging around there. When the school bus comes in around 3:20, people shoot behind the church the school bus takes forever to unload, you know?
Yeah, I know it became an issue because of the bridge on New Falls Road. It was being reconstructed and people were...
That was already done.
I'm
Talking about the bridge behind the school.
I know what you're talking about. I understand.
There's very heavy vehicles go over that bridge, and the north side is washing out. They just throw asphalt in there. Well, the traffic goes over it. I mean, it's hooked onto Thornridge.
We certainly can take a look at it. I don't
You said you were going to have somebody take a look at it.
I don't believe it's township property.
It's not our bridge. We did
It's-
take a look at it 18 months ago. The bridge is on private property. It
It's-
doesn't belong to the township or PennDOT.
And the gate, because I think you had asked us to sort of make the gate closed and restrict traffic. It's not our bridge. We can't restrict traffic. It belongs to the church.
Well, I guess that's it then. Somebody go off that bridge. Who's going to be, you know?
Well, the church obviously is going to be responsible. I think I think I had a conversation with
Yeah,
the
but the
pastor at
property might go
time.
down the center of the stream, and the one side of the bridge is in Thornridge. You know, I can't build a bridge over in Thornridge, you know?
Well,
If the property goes down the center of the stream, if it does, the other bank belongs to us. Half the bridge is ours.
I'm not sure of that. We can look at it and see. I know Mr.
It's a
Sullivan-
very unsafe bridge. It should put a post in the middle and keep it for pedestrians. There's no reason that cars go across there.
Again, that's not something we can do on private property.
There was a couple of things you said that kind of understand what you meant. You said laws are made for the minority last couple meetings ago, and I didn't know what you meant by that because I thought laws are made for everybody. And
No, actually, what I said was that laws are made because a minority of the people that happen to break the law. Obviously, not everybody's a murderer, but that doesn't...
that's not what you said.
Yes, it is what I said, Mr. Dayton.
Okay, you're on tape. Well, then you later on you said what kinds of families use the pool, talking about being barcoded or whatever. You want to know what kind of families you could track them. And the last time I heard that, the guy lost the pool up northwest of here for saying something similar.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Mr. Dayton.
They were talking about changing the tags to the pool.
Right. Oh, the
And you
plywood-
said that would be,
plywood pool,
right, you said that would be a good idea to find out what kinds of families are using the pool. What do you mean, but what kinds of families?
Because if families are using the pool with a lot of young kids.
Well, the woman that was in the pool when that bus unloaded, she said very much the same thing. What kind of families are these? And they ended up losing the pool.
Mr. Dayton, if you're accusing me of being a racist, you can sit down
I
and
didn't
shut
say
up.
that. I didn't say that. I just want you to explain what you mean by it.
Well, I'm trying to, and you're not letting me do it.
Okay, go ahead.
You think you know what.
No,
what
go
I'm
ahead.
talking
Tell me
about,
what you
obviously
said.
don't. What I said very clearly was that what it allow our Park and Rec Department to do is to track families that use different, whether it's the pool or some other operations we do in the township, so that allows us to design different programs. If we know there's a lot of kids coming to that pool who are very young, then maybe we can do programs to help kids learn how to swim. Maybe we can advertise programs that little kids would like. Maybe we do movie nights at that pool. We can figure out what age groups come, and we can decide what kind of movie to show because we know most of the kids that come are a certain age. We can see who's coming the most often, and that would help our Park and Rec Department
That's
decide.
not what you said. Read the tape. Watch the tape. It says you'll be able to find out what kinds of families are in the pool. You can. Everybody saw the tape. You can't argue with it.
All right.
That's what you said. So anyway, that's it. I agree with when they talk about the island up there, spending all that money. If you look at the river when it comes up, if you look at it from the Jersey side, you don't. It's really too close to the water.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Dell?
Good evening. One of my questions was going to be about the island. I wanted to know what kind of progress we were making there and how much money we've spent to date on that project.
At the moment, what we're waiting for is waste management because of the new landfill operation that's going in, Gross Fairless, I think it's being called. There is wetlands that they are disturbing, and they have to mitigate those wetlands within a certain area. They're working with DEP. They're going to be mitigating a certain amount of wetlands on Biles Island, and they're working with DEP to figure out how much they need to sort of set aside the kind of restrictions. Once they do that, and that's sort of agreed to by DEP, then ACT can get moving in terms of looking to plan, because it's going to be in the phase 1 area. The area that we're going to have the most immediate use for is the area where they're going to be mitigating the wetlands. So while they're figuring out where exactly that mitigation area is going to be, ACT is a little bit restricted, and they can't really start looking for where to put a parking lot or where to put trails because you don't know where the wetlands mitigation is going to be. So we're kind of waiting for that right now from Waste and DEP. In terms of money spent, off the top, I mean, we don't know necessarily off the top of our head. Everything obviously has been just the consultation fees, it's been the design work, it's been the meetings they've come to, public meetings, as well as the meetings where, inviting the public to come in and comment. And
Are we a couple $100,000 in, $500,000 in, or $20,000 in?
Closer to the $20,000 range.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like maybe, what was.
So we still technically could stop this before it becomes a nightmare. I mean, we're not too far in where there's no turning back. At what point are we going to be too far in before we cannot turn back? And the other question I have is, we do have some, there's going to be some voting going on soon. Is it something you could put on the machines to see if people really want to have this secondary park?
No, it's not proper for a referendum.
No, I just didn't know if there's some way we can poll the people of Falls Township to see if people want to spend the money on a secondary park that I don't think we need. But I didn't know if there was a chance to find out who really wants this park. And if it's like the boat ramp, where 20 or 30 people from the township use it in an entire year, and we spend $1.5 million for 30 people, I think it's a waste of money. And if no one's going to use this park, or very few people use it, and I think we have an excellent park. You guys have done a really nice job. I'm not here to criticize you on everything. The park we have is beautiful, and I think people are using it and using it to its full capacity. But the thought of building a secondary park, I think it's going to be a colossal disaster. I think it's going to be a money pit. So I just didn't know if there's a legal way to go and find out from the people who live here if they actually want it.
Well,
And if the majority wants it, then I have no problem with the continuation
Right.
of the money being spent. If people really truly want this, and I'm the only one that doesn't want it, then so be it. But I don't know that anyone wants this secondary park.
Yeah, referendums, obviously, as Mr. Clark said, can't just be for everything.
Okay.
I mean, people are elected to make decisions, and a lot of politicians sometimes turn to referendums because they don't want to make decisions. One of the things that I can rely on in terms of looking for input are all the meetings we've had, all the public meetings we've had. You know,
They're just not very well attended anymore. And
but
I mean,
if it was, but that's my point. If,
Yeah.
you know, certainly people that have been here for a while remember when the landfill first came in and the wheelbraker first came in, and this, you couldn't have a meeting in a room this size
Correct.
because it was too small.
Yeah.
And the outrage by people. And we haven't seen that. I haven't gotten a lot of feedback publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Just out when I'm out somewhere. I mean, I'm at Pathmark or wherever at church or something. No one's saying to me,
I don't think they know about
That's-
it. I mean, I've told people, I was like, what do you think about this other township park we're putting in? They said, what the hell are you talking about? And I explained to them where the park's going to be, and nobody knows about this park. And we're going to be spending,
we can't, I mean, there's a limited amount more we can do aside from the meetings that are twice a day broadcast and newspaper stories, and I think it was even in a couple of the township newsletters we put out. I think we talked about Biles Isle, and it's been a couple of years now that we've been doing this. I mean, it's not, I mean, there's a limited amount that, you know, again, I mean, you know, if it were, you know, huge outrage and people were here saying, no, don't do this, I mean, obviously the board would
I mean, I know it's moving sort of slowly and it's creeping along, and it's not like it's being built tomorrow.
Right.
But I just figured if we're $20,000, $30,000 in, I mean, we've wasted a lot more money than that in the past. I mean, it wouldn't be too hard to turn around and say, let's just leave it a natural preserve, send a bulldozer down there, make some trails if people want to walk on it. But
that's-
to spend money down there
But that's basically, that's the plan.
well, not the plans I've seen.
Well, the plan, yeah, but the first phase of this is basically what you just said, and we don't even have to send a bulldozer down because the trail's already there.
And that's probably all you'll ever see in the next 30 years,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
Because Waste Management has no plans on leaving there anytime in the next maybe 2 decades, so.
So you're telling me that whole ACT engineering plan, that whole setup, none of that's going to be done?
That's conceptual, like, you know, the northern part, what you see that's already pretty much naturalized, that's what we're talking about getting to and using.
Okay.
That whole plan is something that we had to do. We had to have a plan to get any funding, any grants, anything. We had to come up with a complete plan.
So there's no desire on your part to entertain that?
I mean, it's in my opinion, I think the other board members feel the same way, at least I think they do, and obviously they can, you know, I'm hoping I'm not sort of, you know, saying it wrong in their minds, but if we have the money, if the desire's there, and if it becomes available in 20 years, well, I don't know, we won't be here, but 20 years, you know, at least I don't know, I think we'll be here. In 20 years, you know, if someone decides, hey, we can move forward with this, well, the plan's done. They don't have to hire somebody to do it. If they decide, no, we don't want to do it, then they don't have to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Those are all the names on the list. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay. All right. We'll move to agenda item number 2. Consider agreement and stipulation between Falls Township and Viking Associates. Turn to, I guess, Mr. Rudolph, or Mr. Rudolph, wow.
Mr. Rudolph.
Yeah, how about that?
Wow.
I didn't recognize you.
Just a bright white shirt.
It's a bright white shirt that
Maybe
threw
that's
me
it,
off.
the white from my,
Yeah.
when my shirt threw everybody off.
Mr. Rudolph, sorry about that.
These next
Mr.
two
Clark
items.
or Miss, I'm thinking Rukoff, and then forget it. It's not worth it.
These next two items are related, item number 2 and item number 3. As the board and members of the public may recall, this is involving an application that was before the Falls Zoning Hearing Board back in 2009, where a developer wanted to build a high-rise, age-restricted building on this site. We filed an appeal on behalf of the township, and another appeal was filed by a resident by the name of Catherine Ross. Since that time, the township and the owner of the property and a potential developer of the property have been involved in discussions and negotiations to figure out a way to allow the developer and the owner to develop their property, but not the original high-rise plan. As the board may recall, what most of the residents objected to regarding this development was the height of the proposed building. And that was what many of the houses and Mrs. Ross, who lived near the property, were most concerned with. This new plan, which has been the subject of many meetings and many discussions and many plans over the last several years, has now eliminated the high-rise, and it is now proposed to be townhouses. The developer is represented by Charles Marty, who is here this evening, and the owner of the property is represented by Thomas Hecker, who is also here this evening. The stipulation in front of you would resolve the litigation, and then the change of zoning would allow them to move forward and build the townhouse community that is proposed. Mr. Sullivan and the developer's engineer have reviewed multiple sets of plans over the last several years, and the plans that will finally be approved with all of these conditions will be made part of this agreement. We have been in contact with Ms. Ross's attorney. She has indicated, or her attorney has indicated to myself and Ms. Gallagher that she is not opposed to our current plan, and procedurally she would rather just see her appeal withdrawn as we move forward with this stipulation. So there is no opposition from the only resident who did file an appeal back in 2009. I know that Mr. Hecker and Mr. Marty are here to briefly take you through the plan, and then their engineer is here if there are any questions, and obviously Mr. Sullivan can answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you for the summary, Mr. Clark. And I think it makes sense to sort of do these, obviously, both at the same time rather than, sort of separate them. Obviously, they are related. And I also think it does make some sense before we start looking at agenda item 3, just to kind of go through, as I see Mr. Dumack set up the plans here, just what we're looking at. I guess it was, I forget if you said the actual date. I think it was just 2008, maybe 2009. This plan was first raised. Somewhere around that time period, the idea of a very large retirement apartment complex. There were numerous issues the township had with that, neighbors had with that, and so this is hopefully a compromise. Thank you. So the board will be seeing at some point in the future, a land development plan for this. That's not necessarily what we're here to do tonight. We're not approving any land development. That still has to happen. But this is obviously a stipulated agreement between the township and the builders to essentially end any kind of legal action in favor of this compromise. And then if the compromise is approved, then obviously the next step is to change the zoning, because you can't do this compromise plan if the zoning stays the way it is. Because these properties will not be age restricted. They would just be townhouses. Is that correct, Mr. Marty?
Yes, that is correct.
And please go ahead and Phil, I guess.
I'm here tonight with...
Before Mr. Marty begins, just to clarify, Mr. Harvey, the copy of the plan that Mr. Marty has just given to the board members and myself and everyone else here, and also the copy that is up, is the record plan that Mr. Sullivan has reviewed, and is the plan that if the board approves the stipulation, this plan will be made part of the record. So there won't be the normal land development process, because all of that will have been approved as part of the record. This plan conforms with the zoning changes. So this plan would be the record plan that would happen.
I apologize.
Yep.
Good evening. I'm here tonight with the owners of Marmar Builders. Marmar Builders would be the developers of this project if this stipulation was approved and the change of zoning occurred. They would be buying the ground off of Viking, who currently owns it. With me tonight is, excuse me, Jarek Ostanowicz and Wojtek Kanuski, both of the owners of Marmar. they and the project engineer, Mr. Heath Dumack. The property is a vacant tract of land that's just under 4 acres in size on the northwest side of Trenton Avenue between the Morrisville Post Office and Route 1. The property, as you know, is, and as is mentioned by Mr. Clark, the subject of an appeal pending, an action pending before the Court of Common Pleas. The development would consist of 40 townhouse units. Each of them would have a garage. The development would be served by public water, public sewer, and natural gas. It will also be interconnected with a separate spillover parking area besides parking in the garage, the street, and in the driveway. There's a separate parking area on the adjoining apartment complex that we've negotiated a cross easement with, where there would be 62 additional parking spaces on a separate parcel that is adjacent to this parcel and is connected with the roadway that is part of this development. Development's designed with what's called a full retention stormwater management system, so that all of the water that falls on the site and is generated by the site will in fact stay on the site and infiltrate into the ground. The system consists of 2 surface basins, what's called a rain garden system, and a vegetative swale, which is a drainage swale with a French drain in it for the stormwater management. There is a single access to this development. It's off of Trenton Avenue. And right as you pull through that, you can also turn to the left and interconnect with the parking area, which, as I said, was adjacent. There are buffer plantings which completely surround the development, consisting of 141 trees and shrubs. The development is designed with street lights, curbs, and sidewalks. And that's pretty much it. We have been submitting plans and revised plans that after your engineer's comments in order to try and bring everything as close as possible into compliance and to satisfy the township's requirements for in excess of 2 years. I look back at my file when I first got involved in this, it was July of 2010. So this is not a snap decision on anybody's part. It really has been, and there have been numerous meetings and, as I said, numerous revisions. Heath Dumack is here as the project engineer to answer questions. I'm here to answer questions. And I know Mr. Hecker's here on behalf of his clients, the current owners of the property, to not only lend support, but to answer any questions he can.
Okay, thank you. We'll have board comment and questions first, and then we'll open up public comment. Mr. Snipes, comments or questions?
Yes. In the stipulation that we have, Mr. Clark, maybe you could answer this, or Ms. Gallagher. The variances required or being requested are for, I'm assuming they're for the zoning that is being requested, or are they for the present zoning? If you know what I mean.
They're for the zone.
For the rezoning. So if we rezone it, then these variances would still be requested.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And there are, can't even count how many there are.
40.
40?
40.
40. Right, I don't remember another project that had so many. The rain gardens, just tell me a little bit about the rain gardens. I know a little bit about them technologically, but where are they going to be placed? And
I'll let Mr. Dumack explain that.
Good evening. What we have is a primary retention basin, which would be in the northeast corner of the site. What we have in a interior courtyard is a rain garden and small detention system, the piping of which will then run to the primary system. So this rain garden will end up acting as it is a BMP that will assist in filtering any of the runoff coming off of the proposed homes before it makes it into the retention system.
So that basin that I'm looking on this drawing, the basin in the center is the rain garden, is that?
That's correct.
Right, okay. And all the other homes around here are draining toward that. Is there underground piping that's bringing it over to that rain garden?
Yes. Also, we have additional piping capturing the downspout runoffs from these two buildings. It then runs along the proposed Nichols Way, parallel to Trenton Avenue. It's a surface swale with an underground French drain pipe system. Again, it's a vegetative swale that, in essence, directs the water into the retention system.
For the entrance and exit, is there, I assume you're not anticipating a traffic light there?
No, no traffic light. It's currently under review with PennDOT, and they've not suggested any need for a traffic light there, nor does our traffic impact study require it.
I think that's something we as a board should talk about, is the traffic on the road already is not necessarily the number of cars, but it's the pattern with the post office and the entrance to the neighborhood across the street. It's just a little, I've seen some near misses along there. It's a little bit dangerous, but that's something other people will want to pipe in on. That's what I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, Mr. Dance had heard the question, how many are there, and thought the question was how many units, not how many waivers. There's 29 waivers.
Not 40, I'm
not
sorry.
40, so mistaken.
Yes, 40. Thank you. I didn't think there were that many.
Still a lot, but Mr. Galloway, comments or questions?
Not right now, thank you.
Mr. Dents.
Some comments. As it was said earlier, this is a project that's been going on for some time. And originally, this is very close to home for me. I live less than 100 yards away, out the back on Independence Drive. There were, on the back side of Nichols Way, original plan had houses on both sides. And I believe it was almost 46 houses that they've scaled down at our request and
Yes.
come to an agreement with this, which I think is a good plan compared to what it started out as, and is going to be as good as it's going to get for the neighbors that are behind this property with the street and everything else. A lot with the drainage basin too. I believe there's a similar drainage system in Avonroe, if I'm not mistaken. Is that not true? Oh, I thought somebody commented. I remember that on the zoning hearing board. That was a big concern with a lot of the residents, was the runoff heading down towards Penn's Place, the neighborhood Mr. Snipes spoke of, and Rock Creek Run, Rock Creek down at the end there, where it's always flooded.
That's towards Trenton Avenue, right?
Oh, sorry.
Everything is designed to be contained on site, so there will be no runoff. Everything is captured. The project will have zero impact on Independence Drive. It's going to have zero impact down Trenton Avenue towards Rock Run or the post office. The containment, the infiltration rates that the results that we got were fairly substantial in the double-digit range, which is extremely good for this area. There's a layer of a sandy gravel, I believe approximately 5 to 6 feet down, and that's what we're tying into for our infiltration rates.
Okay. Compared to the 7-story units that were, 7-story building that was original, this is a good plan that I think I like. That's all I have.
I'll come back to you. Mr. Rocco.
Yeah, I just had a few questions. How high, what's the height of these townhouses?
35 feet.
35 feet. And I'm assuming the garage is underneath? Is that true?
It's considered part of the first floor.
Part of the first floor.
I apologize. I do have elevations of the architecturals if you want to see them.
Sure, yeah.
Put that here and I'll flip this plan. Is it on the other side of this plan too, Peter?
And what's the height from the ground? 30 feet?
35.
Sorry, 35 feet.
So the other question I had was regards to the rain garden. What is that like when it's not wet? Is it, how deep is it? Is it more like a small?
It's basically a small depression. The vegetation tends to be less mowed. This is going to be managed by a homeowners association. What you're looking at are almost the way I would describe them would be 2 to 3 foot high flowering plants, things that you would see, say, on the edge or bank of a stream.
Okay. And then my last comment was regards to the lighting.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure when you put these plans together or when they were revised, but have you considered LED lights for the street lighting?
We have, I believe the final plans are still in review. The last commentary that I saw, I believe, was from either the fire marshal or the police chief requesting additional lights. I believe our plan had 4 lights, and he's asked for another 5. So we now have a total of 9 light standards through the development.
And is the plan to dedicate these streets back to Falls Township?
No.
Okay, they're not coming back. Okay. All right, I think that's all I have. Thank you. Oh, I did have one more. Mr. Sullivan.
Sir.
The gentleman mentioned 0 runoff on the Independence, 0 runoff on the West Trenton. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Not that I didn't believe you, but.
It's nice to have somebody from their own team confirm.
Trust but verify, right? Trust but verify.
I have something else. Where are the 4 lights that you originally had located?
The traffic.
The originals, I believe, 1 here at the entrance, 1 at this intersection, 1 here lighting the guest parking area, and then I believe we had 1 here at this bend.
And do you know where the new ones are proposed, or they didn't tell you where they wanted them?
They're actually on the plan. If you want, I can turn to them.
Our version's pretty small.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah, it's, I have good eyes, but not that good.
Yeah. It's the one plan that doesn't appear to be on this set. Hold on, we'll keep going. There we go. All right. What we have here, well, you can see the photometrics as configured and illuminated.
So they're down lights, they're not...
There's a pillow.
Yes. They're down firing, they're basically shoebox enclosures.
So they're not going to affect the houses behind, that's what my question was.
No.
Okay.
Everything is firing towards these residents.
Okay.
And not the existing homes.
All right, thank you.
The way the homes are designed, where it's 3 levels, a garage and 2 levels over it, is that basically how you would describe it? So it's called a 3-story building?
Can I go back again?
I'm going to make you earn it tonight.
For the last 2 years, yes. What we have basically are 2.5-story homes. I believe, based on the dormering, that there is a 3rd floor or attic loft. However, these are 2-story, in essence, 2-story homes.
A lot different than the 7 stories that were originally proposed.
I'll say.
I can honestly say yes.
Yeah. And originally, with the building that was originally proposed, was that age restricted? That was it?
Yes, it was.
I did want to comment, I did visit a community that had a rain garden put in, if people are concerned about the fact that a basin, if you want to call it that, is not going to be mowed. I did visit a community that had that kind of rain garden arrangement, and it was really beautiful. A lot of wildflowers and a lot of butterflies. It was a really, so if you're imagining kind of a weed patch, that's not what it is. And obviously that's, as you said, it's a best practice in development these days, and for water filtration and water retention on site.
Absolutely.
One more. These houses are going to be sold, correct?
Yes, sir.
These aren't going to be rental properties, part of the apartments?
No.
I also wanted to ask about the traffic study, on whether, Mr. Sullivan, if you could comment on the traffic study, anything to do with PennDOT. I'm still concerned about the proximity to the post office entrance, which is already a problem at times.
There's no real traffic study done here. The traffic was reviewed by the Township's traffic engineer. With 40 residential units, you get about 40 trips at the peak hour. So 40 extra cars during the PM peak or the AM peak. It is a state highway, so PennDOT has control over the distance between intersections, distance between driveways that access the road. Like as Mr. Dumack said, this is still under review by PennDOT, but we don't really anticipate any changes from what you see on the plan right now.
But you don't imagine they would require a stoplight there?
It would never meet the signal warrants for a stoplight. Not enough traffic.
You know what how do they determine if a traffic light is needed?
Traffic counts and accident reports at the intersections.
And accident reports?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. A few questions. In terms of some of the waivers that we're granting, some of them specifically restrict what property owners can do on their property with regards to plantings, with regards to structures. That's all going to be on the deeds that they receive. They're going to know about that. It's not, it's going to be incorporated into some of the homeowners associations.
It would be in the homeowners documents, and it will be on the plans.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. What the original plan, because obviously this is a wooded area now, lightly wooded area, I guess you could say. And it was slated to be, and obviously the original plan was for the 7-story apartment complex. Do you remember, just off the top of your head, Mr. Beck, you're probably the one to go to, in terms of how many units there were in that apartment, roughly?
Well,
76? 76. All right, so obviously going from 76 units, down to 40.
To 40.
Is obviously, I think, a plus. The homes, do you know at this point the ballpark in terms of price range you're looking for? Or?
I can ask my clients. I don't.
Yeah.
As much as they can get.
Excuse me? Below 300 is what they're looking for.
Okay. All right. So 299,999.
99999.
So, okay. Just curiosity. Let's see. The question I had, and coming back to the rain basin a little bit here. We're having an issue now in some areas of the township with regards to mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. Now, is that going to be obviously a problem here? Is this going to be, something that's going to stay wet even if it hasn't rained for a few days, or is it's going to drain pretty quickly? I heard you talk about the sand, 6 feet down.
Sure.
We need a second mic. No, the system itself, the rain garden itself, is acting as a filter. Everything gets directed, in essence, to the retention basin at the corner of the property. Based on the infiltration rates, we should have no problems achieving, if not exceeding, the 72-hour dry time requirement that's in the stormwater calcs.
That's for the big basin as well?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think those are all the questions I had. Yes.
The size of the lot, again, I'm sorry, I should know that, but
3.88 acres.
3.8, it's almost 4 acres. Yep.
Okay. I have one more question. The land that's kind of behind this, what happens to that land? You don't own that, I assume? To the top corner above your basin there, yeah.
Yes.
TNP 132811.
Is that part of the post office?
No, that's actually a separate parcel owned by Mr. Nolte. He approached me probably about 5 years ago to potentially do a land swap with my client, and it never went anywhere. I believe it's a father-son that owns the property.
Is there an easement to get back there now still? Does anybody know?
Is it an island now? Is it cut off?
No, it's not cut off at all. The geometry, it's actually a trapezoid.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Or a parallelogram, sorry.
I think calling it a wooded area is a stretch. It's more like an overgrown, more like a jungle right now. So I think it's going to be an improvement.
Yeah, I just had one more. The timing of these homes. I'm sure you want to, if you get to approval, to build them as quick as you can and get people in there. When is your builder thinking about? When would he like to see someone settle?
Probably, I would estimate next spring.
About a year. Okay.
It would take several.
They want to start construction right away. As soon as they get their approvals, they can pull their building permits. They will start construction. And first settlement should occur within 3 months after.
Right. So the other question I have, I'm not sure who to direct it to, maybe Mr. Clark, is in regards to Pennsbury. Does Pennsbury get involved? I know when I moved into Fosington Woods, there was I thought there was some pushback because of the number of homes and the capacity to put the children in the schools.
There may have been some pushback at that time, but Pennsbury does not have any standing in a matter such as this. This is strictly a matter that is within the township's responsibilities to make a decision on. So they don't have any input on or any say on what we're going to grant or not grant as far as this is concerned. Yeah. There's no tax breaks for the property owner. There's nothing that would impact Pennsbury other than a development that, as you're saying, may add more children to the school district.
Right. Yeah, especially since they're in the middle of, a bunch of...
And more tax ratables to the school district also.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep, I understand. Okay, so that's all I had. Thank you.
That's it.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, another question. The property we were just discussing, I guess it's between this parcel and the post office?
Yes, sir.
What's the size of that parcel, do you know?
Honestly, I have no idea. I'm going to say somewhere
maybe.
between. It's smaller than this site. I'm going to say.
Is it larger than an acre? Or
it's larger than an acre, but less than 2.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, that, I hope we'll have public comment too. I don't know.
Absolutely.
That in the beginning, when the first proposal came through, obviously there was a lot of negative reaction to it. And I was hoping to see whether potentially some way the property could be protected as open space, but I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, this is a big improvement from my perspective, and I think from everybody's probably on what was going to be planned. So I'm glad to see that, although I still wish that something else might have happened, but property owners have the right to develop their property, and we just want to see it done in a way that's most positive for the community. So thank you.
All right, is there a public comment needed? See a few hands. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Mr. Falkowitz?
Mike Falkowitz, Falls Township. The 29 waivers, what do they entail? I know Mr. Rocco had mentioned about the streets being dedicated, so I'm assuming there's some waivers regarding radiuses and the roadways, but...
I can go through real quickly with you. The depth of the lot, based on this, they're looking for, moving this into high-density residential townhouse district. Even with that, this is kind of...
The setbacks on the property.
Right, the setbacks, this lot depth, front yard size, rear yard size, side yard size, minimum buffer yard, maximum building coverage, parking, recreation area, buffer yards, screen planting for trees, off-street parking, parking facilities again, lighting, the size of the cartways. We're not accepting dedication.
So nothing that's going to adversely impact.
The fire marshal's approved it, correct.
It has to be, right. It has to be approved by fire.
Mr. Dents had mentioned Avonroe, and I remember there was a big to-do when that was first developed. They kind of sidestepped some of they added more than what they were supposed to, and then tried to dedicate the streets, and and Mr. Kenny's been here ever since.
He's the mayor.
Another thing in regards to the 2 mics, maybe we can, since obviously you guys want to get this done, it's been 2 years, maybe we can get them to chip in for a multimedia display so we don't have to have all the flipping. I'm trying to think of you guys. give them a little juice,
Well, that's, yeah, well, it couldn't hurt. We have a new building that we'll be constructing. It's not a bad idea.
And as it was stated, for 2 years now, we've been going back and forth and sending, no, we don't like it, and they come back with a new plan. No, we don't like that one either. They come back with a new plan. And we finally settled on this one.
Mr. Scheffler?
Thank you, Scott Scheffler, Falls Township. Don't know how I got to the top of the list over that gentleman, but
No, it's all right.
thank you anyway. First question I have is regarding how this was arranged to come out tonight. How was this announced to the people who live around that parcel?
Does it have to be posted? Is it?
There was notice placed in, I believe, the Courier Times. There's 2 separate notices posted, and the property itself was posted last week.
Okay, I wasn't aware of how it should be posted. Previously, when we've had other actions on the property, everybody in the surrounding neighborhoods were notified by mail, and we didn't receive anything. I've checked with about 10 of my neighbors over in Penn's Place, and nothing came through. The only reason why I'm here tonight is because I saw the small blue signs that were on the side of the road after, we had 4 or 5 storms. But still, I mean, there was some advertisement on the road, but you had to pull over, look at it, and try to find out what was going on. So I don't know if something can be done to make that a little bit better in the future.
The advertising was done pursuant to the second-class township code. For a zoning application in front of a zoning hearing board, the advertising requirements are different than for a rezoning of a property.
Okay.
The township complied with all the requirements of the second-class township code.
And those are set by the state. The state sets those codes that we have to follow.
Okay. Next thing is, the concern I have right now is the traffic. Right now, I don't know about the traffic study that was done within the township or if they just look through records. But in the winter, it's not as prevalent. But once the good weather sets in, every Saturday there's a near accident or an accident at the post office. Right now, when you come to the post office going down the hill from Woolston, heading down towards the creek, people will try to turn into the post office, and also there's some people trying to either get into the post office in one of those 2 entrances and also for Pence Grant. And what happens is they try to go off to the side of the road, people don't stop, and all of a sudden you get collisions. So I'm wondering if there's something we can do to try to get PennDOT to escalate a traffic study in the area, something along that line where right now along that strip of a quarter mile of about, you've got Penn's Grant, Penn's Place, 2 post office openings, and now we're going to have this facility and the gas station. And there is one home on West Trenton that faces in the same direction as the Getty, or I'm sorry, the gas station, I think the Gas Co now. So is there some way that we can get escalated to have a traffic study done, something like a turn lane being put in place of how it's structured now, so that people do have an alternative to trying to going off to the side of the road?
Well, one of the things we can do, and you heard Mr. Sullivan say that it's a PennDOT road, and PennDOT obviously, has their own sort of parameters in terms of looking at things like that. I guess the place we can start would be to ask our police department to give us an idea, and we can do that. That's something easy. We can have our police department compile just the data in terms of accidents from that, Woolston intersection down to where the apartments are. Is it?
Yeah, from Woolston down to the creek, yeah. Yeah, and even that's actually extending it past that creek where the bridge is, because the bridge is big enough for 2 cars to get across. But there's also probably issues between them and the Sal and Jerry Plaza.
Yeah, it might rise to a level that PennDOT takes a look at it. It might not rise to a level that PennDOT takes a look at. But that's an easy place to start, because that's relatively easy to do in terms of looking through a database that keeps track of accidents by intersection, street, and it's relatively easy to get the cops to do that.
One of the things regarding what the gentleman is referring to is reportable accidents are already sent to PennDOT. So anything that involves a police report is automatically sent to PennDOT. And when they're doing their review, they're looking at those reportable accidents. The things that you were describing where there may be near misses or other problems, if there's not a police report generated, PennDOT will not base a decision on anecdotal data of people complaining about what may happen down there. It has to be a reportable accident, and PennDOT would already have that information when they're doing their review of the plans.
Okay. It's certainly something we can remind them of.
PennDOT
But,
did put a sign, as you probably know, on that shoulder that says no driving on the shoulder, which 0 people respond to. So maybe they thought that was an attempt to help the situation, but it doesn't.
It is pretty bad there sometimes. Sometimes when I leave the post office, I live in Penns Grant. I actually go up to Woolston and around the other way rather than deal with the traffic of making the left back in there.
Right, sometimes when I'm getting out of Penn's Place, I have to do the same and take a right and then get into Penn's Grant.
Right.
And it varies by day. Is there something that we could put maybe a counter on the road to see what the difference is when the traffic, depending upon Saturdays versus other weeks, or other days of the week, or times?
We have a traffic engineer, obviously, that we can take a look at, but
Again, not to give Mr. Shuffler any hope that we can do anything.
Yeah.
This is a PennDOT road.
Right.
Okay.
And PennDOT will determine whether or not they want to do the traffic, what traffic counts they'll do, what they have as far as reportable accidents. And the only thing I would mention to you is we can drive down by the new Wawa and we can look at what we've been waiting for PennDOT for 14 years to redesign that road. They don't always move as quickly as we would like or in the manner in which we would like, and that's unfortunately what we're dealing with here. The developer is required to submit his information to PennDOT. PennDOT gets the reportable accidents. They'll determine whether the traffic counts, and then we're at their mercy when it comes to a state road.
Okay, understand that. Is there a better way that we should be going forward and trying to get their attention?
Again, I would mention that you go down by the Wawa. We've been trying to get their attention at that road for 15 years and have been unable to.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. PennDOT, as you can imagine, very often hears these concerns from residents that are impacted by anything that's on a state road. And very often they go just by the data that's in front of them as opposed to any sort of concerns or any sort of anecdotal data that is provided by anyone. They look at the traffic counts. As Mr. Sullivan said, this will not generate a lot of additional traffic because there's not that many units. And PennDOT only usually looks at the data. It's tough.
Right, okay.
Something to consider too, this is 40 residential units. It's not a business in there. I know in Penns Grant, we get a lot of cut-through traffic, which is something you won't be getting in here.
Right.
True, one exit.
That started, a lot of that started when we paved Mayfield Road. And people didn't realize, I don't think, a lot of people didn't, that you could actually cut through to get to West Trenton. And it seemed like at that time, all of a sudden, we have a lot of traffic. I know cars fly down my street, it's ridiculous.
No,
But
I
hopefully you
feel
don't get a
bad
lot
for
of
you. We
that.
don't have the problem over at the other place
Yeah.
because it's just one opening.
Right, so hopefully it's a similar situation where there's not cut-through traffic going through there. People that are turning and going somewhere else. It'll be the 40 residents that live there, or the 40, however many cars there are.
And I think it's required they have 8, or they have 80, or 2 spots for each.
We're required the
Item.
ordinance to have 2 spots for each.
Right, the ordinance requires them to have 2 spots, and obviously there's other parking for, people that come to visit or whatever, et cetera.
Yes, and if I could, one last question about the parking. We couldn't see it from the cheap seats in the back, but with the additional parking that you're talking about, is that the lot that's already existing in the apartment complex?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
it's not used.
yeah. This one
This lot in here.
in the south.
Correct.
Yeah, and, I mean, you go by there, it is used now. I can guarantee you'll find at least 20 cars in there tonight.
I think we're required to have 20 cars in additional parking. We have 62 spaces.
Yes, right.
Okay, 62 in that alternate area, and then there's 2 in front of each house?
There's the garage, there's the driveway, and then there's on-street parking.
Okay, okay, that's all I had.
Garage is counted as one of the parking spaces.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kinney?
Thank you, young man. Please, chairs. First, as I was president of Admiral, let me explain to a young man, I did not want our street dedicated. There, out of 82 homes, 5 people in the development wanted it dedicated. I try to tell them why you don't want it dedicated. You dedicate it, anybody can park on that street. You can't stop a tractor trailer from parking on there if they want to. And plus, there's a lot of other problems with having it dedicated. I got one question. When they develop this and everything, will that do anything with Admiral? We're right now AQ. Will that change our status to high density?
No,
it won't. It won't touch us.
Just location.
No, that's okay. Is that short enough, son?
Good job. Stipulation for illegal action would be different responsibility. So they couldn't build. That's different. That's right. Mr. Mariani.
Not at all opposed to this. I just have a question. This is going to tie into number 3, the amendment to 2097, correct?
Yes.
Is that going to require us to amend Chapter 2097 again when we get a high-rise development in our township?
No, all this does, the
It's going
zoning
to clearly
code-
define the area, I understand
Yeah,
that.
it's just specific to this
Right.
parcel. We're
Exactly.
changing the zoning. It doesn't change anything else.
I understand that. But does that mean that when we get a high-rise coming up here, you'll have to make another amendment to that so you could clearly define where that high-rise is?
Well, only if these guys build these houses and tear them down in 10 years and try to build a high-rise, then we'll have to
Oh, no,
change
no, I'm
this.
talking about someone else
No, it
coming in
doesn't
and build
matter.
a high-rise.
Somewhere else, no, because it's literally by location. And we're specifically changing
Right.
the zoning in this specific location, nowhere else.
Okay.
The original plan started because of the fact that this was
Right.
zoned age qualified.
Right.
No,
I don't remember the politics of how it became age qualified.
Now, if it is age qualified, is it going to require a buffer? I think that was something that I read about.
Well, it's going to be changed. I mean, that's part of the
Code
process.
309, et cetera.
It's going to be changed from age qualified to high-density residential townhouse.
Okay, so then that's...
The buffers are part of the waivers are the buffers between, houses, between yards, between properties. Yes, those
Exactly.
are the waivers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Ireland.
Matt Arlen, Falls Township. In reference to the traffic study which Mr. Scheffler brought up, gentleman over here stated just reportable accidents to PennDOT. Reportable accidents, are they not defined as sustaining injury, vehicle having to be towed, or death? Or is that what's considered reportable accidents now to PennDOT?
I'm not sure exactly what gets reported to PennDOT, but when a police report is written out, if they're using the PennDOT forms, if they're submitting it on the PennDOT system, that is called, constitutes a reportable accident. I don't think it requires serious injury or death. I think they're much lower than that qualifies as a reportable accident.
All right, because that's something that you might want to just take a look at, because a lot of times nowadays, reportable accidents are only considered ones that where a vehicle must be towed, there's injury, no matter how slight, or death. So a lot of your fender benders are just a lot of incident reports that are just made, but not forwarded to the state for that study.
But again, where people are saying it's something that we should look into, we don't control the forms. Our police officers are given PennDOT forms that are developed by PennDOT. And when there are accident reports, our police officers are governed by those forms. It's not like Ben Salem doesn't have its own form, Falls doesn't have its own form.
I'm clearly aware of that.
Right, so everybody has to use the PennDOT form. So it's not something we can look into, it's not something we can change.
No, what I'm saying is what constitutes a reportable accident to the state is a different parameter than maybe just a small fender bender where there is an accident that takes place that's just done on a local incident report and not a reportable accident to the state. So that would still be a traffic accident in that locale. Hence, Mr. Dent's is stating about he sees it on a regular basis and he tries to avoid the traffic as much as possible. So the whole reportable incident to the state is, what I'm asking.
Well, we can, I guess we can verify how our police officers do it, the protocol, but at this point, of course, there's no way they can go back and look at accidents from the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years and say, oh, well, let's change this and make it reportable because we want PennDOT to look at. I mean, I understand your point you're making, you know, that what we think might be getting sent to PennDOT might not be getting sent to PennDOT in terms of analyzing this, but we can't, there's no way we can rectify that
I'm
now.
not trying to say that you rectify anything. I'm just making a point that what constitutes a reportable accident now as opposed to what has in the past.
Okay.
I mean, you may have traffic accidents that are just non-reported because it's...
Sure, there's probably dozens the police don't even get called.
Correct.
Well, yeah, and that, but, you know,
all right, thanks, that's all.
We can't control. Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, see no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any final comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, I do, actually. It looks like the parking, one is in the garage, and the other one is, I guess, in the driveway behind the parking.
That is correct. Plus, there is provision, well, plus there is the 62 parking spaces that we have gotten an easement for in the adjoining parcel.
That's the parcel next to them?
Yes.
Okay, and it also looks like you're looking for relief on the lighting in that parking lot as well? Is that, did I read that correctly?
Well, the answer is yes, but again, some of the requests for waivers or variances, although it might say to permit a side yard of 2 feet, for instance, instead of, or a side yard of 5 feet instead of the required 8 feet, that may be with only one lot. Just reading that list doesn't show you a true picture.
I'm reading number 18 specifically.
Okay, well, I'll look at that while Heath answers your question.
Okay, section 209-40.
Sure. The reason that we cannot light this parking area is it's not our lot. We've lit coming into the lot, but we don't have the right to install light standards within this parking area. It's not our parcel.
So are you renting the lot off of the apartments? How did you get permission to use the lot?
We have an easement.
We have an easement.
Cross easement agreement. I'm sorry, we have a cross easement agreement, which allows us to use the lot.
Is the owner of, is the owner of the apartment complex that has the lot, are they also the same owner, were the same owner of this particular parcel?
I believe they're a related entity.
Okay, so that's why they're doing it. It's part of the land deal, is that we'll sell, you know,
You also
granting an easement.
see the walkway between these two buildings leading to the parking lot.
Right.
Is there on-street
Yes, your township, your engineer wanted a walkway to get to the townhouses, so that's why it was put in.
Right, it makes sense.
Is there on-street parking?
Yes, there's no rules against on-street parking. We're not posting it. They're private streets.
And the streets are standard 35?
No, they're not standard. They're a little narrower than standard. They're 24, right? Yeah.
And what's our standard? Okay. So is there any concern with the parking lot not being lit as per our ordinance? By Mr. Sullivan, I guess I'll defer to you.
They've actually installed a light that lights the parking directly adjacent to the property line. Isn't there lights in the parking lot right along the entrance drive there?
I believe there is, but it hasn't been mapped out.
Okay, I think, Mr. Rocco, that this parking lot is lit to the standards that were enforced at the time. So, to me, it's okay.
Okay. Is there sidewalks on the island, I guess, if you would?
On West Trenton?
No, on the island of the townhouses. So as you come in, right there.
At the entrance.
We do have a sidewalk that runs around the perimeter of the site. It's only on one side of Nicole's Way, so we don't have it on both sides. Where it was impacting a possible driveway, what we did is we shifted it to the other side of the street.
You can see it on the plans,
Yeah, there's
Mr.
a
Rocco.
Is there
It's
any-
the lighter white area that runs around?
No, yeah, I see the outside rim.
It does not run around the center part of where the buildings are, just around the outside buildings.
Yeah, so the reason you didn't propose, it wasn't proposed is because of the driveway?
It was a number of different impacts, impervious surface, attempting to design it to the best of our ability to the township standards. There were a number of different factors at the time, but the intent was that we did provide a sidewalk around not only the interior perimeter of the site, but also along Trenton Avenue as well.
And Mr. Rocco, you cannot park on a sidewalk, so if they had placed sidewalks around the inner buildings, they would have needed to make the driveways longer to accommodate the sidewalk and the driveway. That would have ended up pushing all of the buildings back, and as you can see, it's a relatively tight fit, and it just wasn't feasible with the small amount of units and the outside sidewalks around the perimeter. It was the discussions with the engineer and myself. We thought that this was, again, a reasonable accommodation under the circumstances.
Okay. Not sure. Obviously, there's been a lot of thought put into this. This is the first time that I'm really diving into it, so that's why I'm asking these questions. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Just on the sidewalk, obviously sidewalks along West Trenton Avenue is a big improvement. What's there now wouldn't qualify as a sidewalk, and I do see people walking along there pretty frequently, so I think that would be an improvement. On the dedication of the streets, I know we've had some communities before where streets were not dedicated, then come to the township looking for dedication. And obviously, we're not going to do that in this case, but I wanted to ask you, Mr. Clark, what legally the seller of the homes is required to disclose to the prospective buyers about that kind of situation.
The plans that you have in front of you include a number of notes. When the property owner, now Mr. Marty will probably tell you that most of this will be contained in the homeowners association documents, but also as all of these notes are on the recorded plans, any prospective buyer, when they get the title report or whatever they get, or they go and get a copy of the deed themselves, it will, the recorded plans themselves, it will tell them all of these different restrictions. So they will have ample notice. Whether somebody pays attention to it or not, or whether or not somebody decides 10 years from now they want you to take dedication of their streets, we can't do anything about that. But there will be ample opportunity for the buyers of these properties to know that we are not taking dedication of the streets, or the detention basin, or the rain garden.
Okay. Then one question also for you, Mr. Clark, about changing the zoning, which I know we'll do next, or we'll consider next. And I know as a township, we're permitted to change the zoning on parcels. When we do this kind of thing, is there any, I know we've done it before, is there any kind of slippery slope that we need to be worried about? It was sort of related to another question someone was asking, maybe it was a public comment, that in the future someone could come to us and say, well, you did it for them, so now that's legal precedent, you got to do it for us.
You could never prevent anyone from coming to you and say, well, you did it for them, now do it for us. But there is no legal precedent. This is a site-specific rezoning. It is a zoning on a particular parcel of land that in order for the developer to develop it in the manner in which they have proposed, it's going to need that rezoning. This does not bind you with regards to anyone else. It doesn't mean that tomorrow someone can walk in here with a 4-acre parcel and say, I'd like it rezoned to high-density residential townhouse, and you are required to do it. Each matter, each parcel would be reviewed on its own merits.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing, back to the PennDOT just for a second. You said, Mr. Dumack, that PennDOT is doing a review right now. What's their timeline, and what kind of report do they give at the end of that? And
it's my understanding that PennDOT has 30 days to review and to respond. The submission was just sent in. So within the next 30 days, we should see a response from them. But I can say this, the previous submission had very minor comments and tweaks that were required. So I'm not expecting anything substantial coming back out of this review.
So they wouldn't request a left-hand turn lane or striping of a certain kind or something like that? It's unlikely that they'll do that.
It's very unlikely at this point they would. That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to return to why we want to change the zoning on this particular case. And Mr. Clark, it seems to me it's because the owners have come to us over the years, and they've worked in earnest to develop their land. And we've seen so many plans that came by, and I haven't been on the board when the high-rise came up. We read about it and heard about it. So in this particular case, we're working with the owners to bring about their dream of developing their land, because we've seen them, what should I say, work in earnest to accomplish the task.
That's exactly what has occurred here, Mr. Galloway. The owners of the property attempted to develop it in conformity with what the existing zoning was, the age-qualified high-rise. The township didn't like it, and neither did a great many of the residents. So we would not be able to say, we don't want you to develop as it's zoned, but then we're not going to let you develop it in any other way. The original development was proposed by Viking Associates, who owned the property, and then they were transferred to Mr. Marty's client, and that's when they came in with this different plan. And they've been working with the township. As Mr. Dents indicated, they've cut back on a couple of units. They've made a lot of changes. Mr. Dumack and Mr. Sullivan have probably spent more time discussing this than either one of them would have liked. So this is a plan that they have done, which is more in line with what the township would want to see there. So in order to effectuate that, we need to change the zoning in addition to approving the stipulation.
Thank you.
I was at the original zoning meeting. I know Mr. Dumack was there, and it was obvious. It was a torches and pitchforks meeting where nobody wanted to even talk about a 7-story building, and it was clear that I couldn't participate in the meeting because I was on the zoning board and I was already elected to this seat, but it was clear that this wasn't going to go easy. So this is a big improvement from where we started a long time ago.
Any other comments or questions?
So these streets can never be dedicated because they're not conforming to our standards?
Unless you or some of your predecessors have a...
Antecedents.
Predecessors, we don't want any of them. You or any of your successors change your mind. But you don't have to. It's very clear that you're not planning on taking dedication to this.
Can't be forced to.
Can't be
No,
forced.
and no future board can be forced to.
Right. No, I've heard people at, where'd you used to live?
Oxford Crossing.
Oxford Crossing. Question me, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And I don't know if that's what you were referring to, Mr. Snipes, but by not having the roads at 26 feet or whatever that number was, right? That would be one of the reasons, had it ever come up, I'm sure. So.
And speaking of that, it was my understanding that parking was going to be allowed only on one side of the street and not both sides of the street at the same time.
I don't think we had discussed that, but I think the driveways that are in fact on.
Well, that goes to emergency vehicle access.
I think, also I think the driveways that line the one side of the inner part of the street were going to prevent any
Oh,
parking
it's going to be
on that
difficult,
side.
yeah, absolutely.
So
It's going to be difficult in spots, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have to make sure that they only park on one side of the street.
Yeah, and there are some areas, it's a good observation, Mr. Sullivan, there are some areas, especially in the northern area by the detention basin, where there are no houses on either side and there's no driveway, so people could theoretically park on both sides of the street. So obviously, I guess some signage hopefully would be going up to make sure that you can pick a side, but no parking this side of the road. Obviously, as Mr. Sullivan's pointing out, emergency vehicles need to get through. But they'd rather not smash their way through with their fire trucks past people's cars. They might enjoy that, but they probably shouldn't do that. But so obviously, and in public safety, obviously, you can't have that. So Other comments or questions? Ms. Sullivan, anything else from you?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Nothing.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that in this, I wanted to take a lot of cue from the public and from neighbors and from people who are concerned. And as Mr. Dents pointed out, the feeling tonight is a lot different than the first plan that came forward. And I came tonight not convinced, actually, just to be honest. But as I listened to the sidewalks and the rain garden and the way that it's been laid out, I feel much more comfortable with it, and I'm going to vote for it. So, just wanted to explain kind of my evolution of thinking, and I appreciate the efforts, and I appreciate the public giving us their input.
Any other comments or questions? So, Mr. Clark, we would be agreeing to the stipulation, is that correct?
Be approving the stipulation, yes.
All right. Is there a motion then to approve the stipulation between Falls Township and Viking Associates for West Trenton Avenue, tax parcel number 13-028-012-002?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question. Why exactly do we need to have the stipulation?
Because we have a lawsuit in
because of the
Bucks County
lawsuit.
Court of
Okay.
Common Pleas. It needs to be resolved. And
Yes,
by
thank you.
agreeing to the
I'm sorry.
stipulation, you are, by the fact that you're agreeing to it, you're authorizing me to execute it when we get a final draft of it ready, so.
Correct, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
It's all right. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen, pull the board, please.
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay. All right, item 3 is consider adopting amendment revising Chapter 209-7, rezoning certain lands from AQ to HRTH. This is obviously the same piece of parcel, rather. This would be ordinance number 13-1. Ordinances? I think we did one, didn't we? I thought we did. No? Yeah, okay.
Little prank Mr. Gray played on.
Pete never did it like
I
that.
asked Ms. Pullen, she said
Okay.
it's the first one.
All right, okay. All right.
Gotta do
She's
resolutions.
the one that causes shots.
We've done resolutions, just not an
Well,
ordinance.
yeah, I know that, yeah, I thought there was an ordinance. I guess we've advertised a lot of ordinances, we haven't approved any of them yet. So, I don't imagine, I would assume that just, all the public comment and board comments kind of has covered this ground. Any board comment or questions at this point?
No.
No, any public comment needed? All right, see no hands. Okay, is there a motion then to adopt ordinance 13-1?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
You want this back?
Good luck.
You can keep it. Recycle it.
We can have Heath make more.
Okay, we,
Tell them to call me when Bennett turns down their perfect.
all right, items 4 and 5 are connected, much like 2 and 3 were connected. And this is, I say right up Mrs. Rukoff's wheelhouse here in terms of what she does, but then again, it would be Mr. Gray's kind of forte as well, being the former finance director. Consider recommendations from the Police Pension Committee, which Mr. Galloway is a representative on, for the pension fund diversification and control. And the second issue would be consider adopting an investment policy statement for the police pension fund. So obviously these are connected. We'll vote on them separately, but maybe we'll do public comment, board comment, all at the same time. So Mrs. Rukoff, if you could explain these, and I know there's a representative here from SEI as well.
Right. As you stated, March 4th, the Police Pension Committee met. They made some recommendations regarding the diversification of our pension fund portfolio and granting some discretionary control to SEI, who is our fund manager. Pat Blizzard is here from SEI. He's here to speak briefly about these items and answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Mr. Blizzard, if you wouldn't mind.
I do have a handout, just...
Okay, thank you. Doesn't matter which way we go. All right, thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here this evening. A couple of items that were just mentioned. We met at March 4th meeting, and as you know, the markets have been very volatile. There's a lot of macro headwinds out there, and SEI is constantly behind the scenes looking at the pension, find out ways that we could diversify the portfolio. An example of that would be in a rising interest rate environment, what would be the impact to your current portfolio today? And it would be pretty sizable. Right now you have about 40% of your assets in a core fixed income fund, which is an intermediate fixed income fund with the duration around 4 to 5, which means if rates go up significantly, you're going to have negative returns in that portfolio. So what we're looking to start to do is, even though we believe rates will be range bound this year, anywhere from 175 to 225 with an upward bias, we're looking to shorten the duration of your overall fixed income portfolio, for one. That's one major change. And then secondly, we're also looking to diversify into other asset classes, which many of our clients are diversified in today. Asset classes like high-yield bonds and emerging market debt, increasing the world equity exposure, which would ultimately increase your exposure to emerging markets equity, which we feel highly about this year. The world equity portfolio that's listed here, jumping ahead here a little bit, under tab 2 on page 7, you can see what the actual changes are. But really, today, your portfolio is not as well diversified as we would like it to be, given the macro events that are taking place and what we're seeing with the economic situation going forward. So we think diversification will help. And it's really outlined here. If you look at the long-term expected rate of return, essentially, we're keeping 8% expected rate of return moving into the new portfolio. But more importantly, we're moving the standard deviation, which is the amount of risk your portfolio is taking on, we're moving it down from 12.4 to 11.9. So really we're doing that by diversifying into other asset classes with lower correlation to one another. But in the end, we're really looking to reduce the size of the bar on the right-hand side here. If you look at this this outline here, the good scenarios represent 95th percentile. So we would expect that the 95th percentile for your current portfolio would be around 30% on the upside. We're expecting you to be about 29%. So we're bringing that down a little bit, but more importantly, we're reducing the poor scenarios, the 5th percentile. So ultimately what we're doing is really we're keeping the same expected rate of return, but we're diversifying into other asset classes, and we're starting to anticipate a rising interest rate environment. So that was one item, really, is we were looking to get this adopted today, if possible. And the other item was to give SCI a little bit more discretion. And what I mean by that today is we're a little bit limited what we can do. We have a 2% variance limit around the funds. So for instance, if your large cap disciplined equity fund went to 48%, it's a 45% current target, we're able to allocate that back down to target. We're looking to have a little bit more leadway as to how much we can put into fixed income versus equities and vice versa, and the limits, which are outlined in the investment policy statement, which also I believe needs to be adopted, are 10% either way. So we're not looking for major discretion, but we're looking for some sort of discretion in order for us in these volatile markets. As you know, all the pension committees and trustees meetings that we go to, they meet quarterly, semi-annual. By the time we get to a meeting and decisions made, and then ultimately that decision's incorporated, we could be talking 6 months to 8 months to a year in some cases. So not to say that's what would happen here, but that's just the reality we all live in today. So we're really looking, especially with the volatility, is to have a little bit more discretion so we can make some of these decisions on your behalf. Let me give you an example. If we think inflation is going to be an issue, then we could allocate a portion of the portfolio to asset classes like Treasury inflation protection securities. That would just be one example of what we could do. Now, if we were going to make any major recommendations outside those 10% variances, we would still go in front of the investment committee and ultimately go through this process.
Okay. Okay. We'll turn to board members. We'll start with Mr. Galloway. Obviously, this is the board that he represents, and I guess maybe he can give us a little bit of a discussion of what how that board feels and their recommendations.
Well, the board felt very positive about the recommendations of Mr. Blizzard. I was impressed personally with his explanation of that standard deviation, where you actually decrease the risk slightly by distributing the funds differently. And then as far as the 10% variance went, it only seemed to make sense in today's day and age. Funds shouldn't be sitting in a place for 6 months, 18 months, without any input, anyone really looking at it. So it seems the best practice That's how I saw it, as a best practice of allowing them 10% variance to move the funds to the places best suited to our needs. The other thing that someone brought up at the meeting was we're only a phone call away, and we're only a day away from changing or reversing, and God forbid, anything that SEI made a decision about, and that's correct?
That is correct. These are all, it's something I didn't mention, these are all in 40 Act mutual funds. They're daily liquidity. So we're not looking to introduce you into hedge funds. That won't be part of this agreement. It's actually listed the funds that are agreeable and allowable to invest in the plan. They're all very liquid mutual funds, daily liquidity.
Very good. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Snipes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Technically, what are we being asked to do? Just to give a verbal okay to a recommendation, or are we actually taking an official decision that's more binding? Or?
We're doing, well, Ms. Rukoff, you want to explain precisely what it is we're doing?
There are two things that we want to do tonight. One is to amend our investment management agreement with SEI. We currently have an agreement dates back to 2002 or 2003. And that amendment is allowing the discretionary model, the 10% movement of between funds so that they can respond better to the market as things
allowing
happen.
them to make those changes.
Yes,
up
allowing
to
them to make
of the
those
portfolio
changes
without
up-
our involvement.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So that's the one item that we're asking the board to authorize, is that amendment. And then the second item is the adoption of an investment policy statement, which the township currently does not have. We follow the guidelines that are set forth in the second-class township code. But we should have an investment policy statement that shows our fiduciary responsibility to these funds and to maintain their safety as well as their earnings. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. That's really the investment committee's contract. That has nothing to do with SEI. We did help draft it because we do help offer templates for that. But every trustees meeting that I go to, we're adopting these investment policy statements. Again, it's a set of guidelines that trustees can look at, the investment committee members can look at, and ultimately make sure that we're in line with those expectations.
In returning to that idea of a 10% variance, it's taking 10% of the funds and moving them at any one time based upon your projections and what's best for the fund. Where we sit right now, the practice right now is, did you say almost 2% you can move?
Yes, right now it's really just a rebalancing thing we're going to limit to. It's not like we're not making moves within the funds themselves. We're a manager of managers. In large cap discipline equity, for instance, we have 5 managers there. We're firing and hiring managers on your behalf. We're already doing that. We have discretion to do that within the funds. We're asking for discretion to make movements 10% equity to fixed income or vice versa. And I've never seen us go even close to 10%, but we're keeping those thresholds. We've done a couple percent here and there. But again, any major asset allocation decisions outside of that, we would come and come to an investment committee meeting and have, obviously a presentation in front of them.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Snipes, anything else?
Is that 10% within a certain time period, or?
There's really no time limit around it.
So
it's a single move. So
single move.
Right.
It could happen a number of times, in other words, although you said we haven't even come close to that.
Right, that is
I was just
correct.
trying to figure out the mechanics of it and what we're actually agreeing to.
So, for instance, today, if you're 60% equities and 40% fixed income, we could go to, if we think the markets are in dire straits, and, we could potentially go down to a 50% equity portfolio and 50% fixed income.
And the next day you could change it again, or the next day you could change it again.
Right, but we're not looking at
you're not
timing the market like that. That's not what SEI is all about. Really, it's just to take advantage of opportunity sets out there, inefficiencies in the marketplace that we believe are out there.
As a safeguard against inefficiencies, right?
Right.
I understand. Just another question for Mr. Clark or Ms. Gallagher. We are required with township funds, I don't know whether the police pension funds are different, to only be able to invest in certain types of investments or certain financial instruments. Is it different between, between the police pension fund and other township funds, or the same rules guide?
The same rules regarding what we're allowed to invest in apply. You have to, everything that we're doing here fits within the second-class township code, what we're permitted to do under the second-class township code.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Dents?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, I have just one. So this seems to make sense to me. How does the notification occur of funds allocations being moved around?
We'll actually have an updated Schedule A amendment, which is the amendment that shows the asset allocation, and we'll send that off to the trustees. As well as they all have internet access set up. We made sure that last meeting, because there's a couple of new members, so they have access to daily access to the website. They can see the allocation changes. But I'm always in communication with my client anytime we make a change. We'll notify them.
And who is your client? Who will you be communicating with?
Falls Township, the investment committee
It goes
members.
through Mrs. Rukoff, yeah.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to hear. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. How long have you worked with Falls Township? I mean, you've been here as long as I've been here, but how long have you been with Falls Township?
Myself personally, I've been the relationship manager for about 3.5 years now, 4 years. Prior to that was my predecessor, Bob Thomas.
Okay.
And we've been working with you for 12 years, 13 years now.
Okay. Okay. And do you, I'm kind of looking just briefly through the overview of SEI. How many other, I guess, we hear horror stories, of course, of towns and cities in California, sort of having to, sell off everything because they just, had bad investments, obviously.
Right.
But, so, not that I believe that's going to happen here at all, but certainly, I guess it's fair to ask how many other municipalities do you handle? I mean, big municipalities, bigger than us, smaller than us, our size, roughly. I mean, I don't expect you to have the exact number, but
I would say on average, we classify, we have municipals, then we have Taft-Hartley plans. They kind of fall into the same bucket from the standpoint that you look at their assets the same way. You have an actuarial assumption rate, and you try to target that rate. Currently, we have about 40 municipal plans. I have a couple right down the street from here that I work with. We have some that are much larger in nature.
Okay.
We have plans in excess of $600, $700 million.
Okay. All right.
We have corporate plans as well. We have endowment foundation across the mix. So we have clients that range from $10 million all the way up to $2 billion.
Okay. All right. I think you explained everything else very well, and other questions asked kind of answered my questions. Any public comment needed? Seeing a few hands. Okay, is motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, Mr. Kenny, I'll let you go first this time.
Is Mr. Rukoff okay with this?
Absolutely.
Pass it. That's all I need.
You could have done that from back there.
Mr. Dell.
How is this gentleman's firm compensated? Did they take a percentage of the gross in that account?
Mr. Rukoff, do you, is it percent?
Yes, it's basis points.
Okay, right, it's
What
percentage.
percent are we paying? 1.3, 1.5? What are we doing?
60 basis points, I believe.
And basis points are, well, are calculated 0.6.
Right.
Okay, so 0.6%.
How much money is in this police pension fund?
Currently with SEI,
Yeah.
we have 20 million, I believe.
With SEI or the total?
No, with SEI.
It's
10.
about 12. Yeah.
Okay. We currently have 12 with SEI. We have a little over 10 with Pliget. We'll
Okay.
be moving the bulk of that money over to SEI shortly.
Now, you're saying you use the same vehicles to invest in. The township, from what I remember in the past, has done terrible with their investments or gotten very minimal return. And I heard something in the area of 8% return with the police pension fund. why aren't we getting 8% in our fund? Why the money, the Falls Township money, not doing as well as the police pension fund money?
I think you're referring kind of to long-term restricted savings that's sort of put into more, I guess, safer investments that don't earn as much. And I don't know if I think it's partly the board being conservative and boards being conservative, not just us. But I think it's also restrictions based on the law. Is that correct? Or?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
It's the same.
The township has certain issues with regards to needing to be a little bit more liquid than the pension fund is.
Right.
Pension fund is a long-term investment. They can take certain actuarial tables, know when they're going to need the money based on the ages of the officers, and they can base their investments on that. The township has to have a little bit more ready-made access to its money. And as you can imagine, putting something in an investment for 3 to 6 months is not the same as putting in it for a number of years.
Right, similar, I guess, to putting, you have money yourself, you can put some of it in CDs, which you can't touch for a year without penalty, or you can put it in a savings account where you can go get it tomorrow.
Or as he was saying, equities, which you're not locked in at all. And that's what I was getting at, is I still understand we can put it, you're saying we can put them in the same vehicles that the police pension fund is using, but we're not utilizing that with 100% of our money because we want to stay liquid in case we need to spend $70 million tomorrow.
Well, the liquidity I think Mr. Blizzard is talking about is more about moving it from fund to fund, not necessarily cashing it out.
I'm not talking about cashing it out. I'm talking about what is our rate of return in our long-term fund? 1% or less? And they're getting 8% or more maybe in the police pension fund. I don't know the exact numbers, but it sounds like he has more room to work with the police pension fund as far as the vehicles he can invest in. And that's my question is, are we allowed to invest in the same stuff with the township money as they can the police pension fund?
No.
Yeah, the answer is no.
The answer is no then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there anything, and does SCI deal with our long-term savings? There's another company right now doing that.
No,
They have some of it.
you have a little bit.
They do. They do have some of it.
Have we been doing any better, or are we still down in the old 1% range?
Rates are still historically low.
Yeah, I mean, the interest rates are low, which is great if you're going to buy a house or a car, but it's bad for people living on fixed income.
And there's nothing else we can invest in that would bring us above that 1%?
Well, we follow the advice of Ms. Rukoff and Mr. Gray, who obviously have decades of financial experience, among them. If they came to us and said we can make more money by putting it here, in fact, they have the ability to do that on their own.
Okay.
If they see a better vehicle for this money, they have the freedom to do that. We do that in the beginning of the year. One of the things we do is we approve depositories for township funds, and it basically means not that we have money in all of them, but it gives them the freedom to move. If they see a higher rate at one place rather than another, they can move the money. They don't have to ask us, they just do it. That meeting we do in January, that's one of the things that happens with that.
Have we been moving our money around, or has it been sitting there?
I think to answer your question, we're very, very limited. No, we really can't invest it anywhere that we're not investing it. I did read in my last Township News magazine that there is legislation proposed to allow us to do some more stuff, but that's in the future. But right now, there's really 5 places we can put our money if it's not.
It's painful to watch. I mean, it
is painful to watch.
Once you have the money, and that's the hardest part, is getting the original chunk of money. You guys could be making so much more money without doing anything for just having the money parked in different vehicles that they can invest in. And that's what I'm just getting to. I'm not saying it's free money by any means, because you're always taking some sort of risk when you invest in anything. But 1% is just, it's painful. I mean, I don't think anyone would be able to retire for the rest of their lives if they pulled 1% return on their 401k.
Right.
So I just didn't know if there's anything that they can do or invest in differently than what we're investing in now.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Den said it well, and I think one of the things to consider, and I don't know for a fact, I mean, I'm not as much a financial expert as Mr. Blizzard and Mr. Rukoff are, but I would suspect that some of the places where we hear about cities going bankrupt is because maybe they had the ability to invest their money in lots of different places, and
well, they don't have enough Republicans.
Didn't turn out well. We'll see.
Luckily, we don't have any. You're right.
They're more conservative with their money. But that was just my main question, because I heard the 8% return. I was like, yeah, that sounded too good to be true. But I didn't know if we could I didn't know if there's a difference, and Mr. Clark told me there was. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing one hand, Mr. Mariani.
I know. You're right.
There are some insured CDs that that can run from 1.5% all the way up to 11.5%, and they're based on commodities, and they are insured. So we could probably do better and still work with some insured CDs. They do exist. Am
We
I
are
correct?
invested
I
in
know, 'cause I
short-term
have some.
CDs.
That's right.
We do have investments in them.
I do. When I was in industry, we had our pensions with the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, but they don't do anything with public. Those are defined pensions for corporations. Is there any possibility that we can do something like combine our police township pensions with other townships, so on and so forth, to lower our risks in these investments, so that we can be a little bit maybe more aggressive?
There's nothing that, well,
Is that what Pliget does, or is it Pliget sort
Well,
of?
Pliget is
Well, we're still
an investment pool,
Right.
not specifically for pensions.
Right.
And we do have funds with them. That
Oh,
is
I'm not
what
talking
they
about
do.
the township, I'm talking about the police department. Is there a possibility that they would be able to combine their pensions with other township police pensions, so on and so forth, that would lower our risk? I don't know the answer to that. It's a
not at the
question.
moment. It's not permitted at the moment.
It's not permitted.
Whether or not it's something that's being contemplated, I don't know, but it's not
Okay.
permitted.
All right. But talk to her about these CDs.
Well, she's...
They work pretty good.
Well, I trust you, and Ms. Rukoff already said that we are invested in CDs like that, and she has the freedom to do that when she can come in tomorrow and move a lot of money in if she wants to. She has that freedom, and we put that much trust in her. You know? So. Any other public comment? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any final questions or comments from board members? All right, so we're looking at two different issues here. First item, I guess technically number 4, we are looking to approve an amendment to the investment management agreement, okay, with SEI for the police pension. All right. As stipulated, I guess, in the March 14th memo, and also in the agreement which township supervisors have in front of them. Is there a motion to approve that amendment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, second, item 5 is to consider adoption of an investment policy statement for the police pension fund. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right. Ms. Blizzard, thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Blizzard, do you have a business card before you go? Just in case I hit the Powerball.
In order, so, my number and my
I see it now.
email address are right on the
Oh, there it is, yep. All right, thank you. Item 6 is our engineer's report. Mr. Sullivan. Hopefully there's a highlight or two in here somewhere.
We can always find a highlight or two, Mr. Chairman. The South Olds Boulevard culvert replacement is well underway at this time. The foundations were poured for the new arch bridge on Friday. Forms are stripped on Saturday, and now they're preparing for installation of the new bridge, which we anticipate to be sometime the first week in April. The 2012 road program, 85% or so of stormwater work is all done. The only streets left are Winding Way West and Midway Drive, so they will be completed within the next couple of weeks. And they've actually started reconstructing roads now. They've removed curbs on, of all places, Mark Drive is where they started their road reconstruction. And they're working on Mark Drive and Louise Drive at this time.
They started on Mark Drive, is that what you said?
Yes, Mark Drive.
Interesting.
Yeah, not sure how they picked that street to start with.
Very interesting.
The Quaker Penn Park Babe Ruth baseball field, the contractor's been out there augmenting the turf again. The outfield is not in too bad a shape. There's a couple of minor depressions that he's going to fill in with topsoil. And there needs to be some dressing up of the warning track material. The infield at this point is not in great shape. We are, at the request of Mr. Rocco, we've ordered breakaway bases for the infield, which have not arrived yet. So as soon as we get those, we'll put them in.
So that basically means that if you slide into them, the base itself will
give.
and the leg doesn't give. Yeah,
Exactly.
snap. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, the infield is still a work in progress. The weather hasn't cooperated as well as we'd like for that, or for the soccer field as well. So we're still hoping that we can get something done relatively quickly. First week in April is when we hope to have the field ready for use.
Didn't you guarantee us we'd be playing soccer on grass last year?
I did, yes.
You did?
Yeah.
And we're going to be playing on grass down there.
Oh, one of the fields is done. There's plenty of grass on it. It looks great. The other one is still a landfill problem. And the senior center, most of the work going on is interior to the structure at this time. And I believe
saw the
that's all.
siding going up. It looks nice.
Yeah.
I believe that's all I have at this time.
Okay, comments or questions for Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Rocco?
Just the baseball field. So is the infield not playable at all?
It's playable. It's not ideal condition at this time. I think before we actually have a real game on there, it'll be ready to go.
What's the plan? The sodded or overseeded or?
The plan was to oversee what was the sod from last year, but he's probably going to end up replacing the sod as soon as we can do that.
And then the contractor's responsible to make sure it stays alive?
Yes.
Okay, because it's going to get, we have scheduled the local leagues to play on the field. So it's going to get some use, hopefully starting in April, all the way through till the beginning of July.
Can we give him your phone
So
number?
I mean, wanted to consider.
Everyone has my phone number. They can call anytime.
It seems like this may not be the best time to plant new sod, especially without a water source.
I agree. We'll take that under advisement. Maybe we won't do anything with sod on the infield until maybe the fall. We'll see how that goes.
It might be a good idea, actually, yeah.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Mr. Dents?
I may have missed it, but what's the status of the tennis court in Penn's Grant?
You didn't necessarily miss that, Mr. Dents.
I skipped it.
It wasn't on the
Well,
reel.
it's still, that's a weather-dependent paving job. It has to be 45 degrees and rising to actually pave it, and then the color coding has to be warmer than that, so.
So there is another paving coat that goes on top of
Yes,
that?
yeah, right now there's just a binder course. So the actual wearing course, or top coat, as we call it, has to be 45 degrees and rising. We'd probably rather have it be a little bit warmer than that before we put it down.
Okay. And is there, oh, that's all I have. I'm good.
Mr. Snipes?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Galloway?
None.
The question I had, the 2013 road program, what's the status of that?
That's still in design at this time.
Okay, what's the projected timeline?
Probably toward the end of April, beginning of May, we'll go out to bid. That's our plan at this time.
Okay. All right. And that would include the paving of some of the roads in Fallsington, correct?
Well, the Fallsington paving is actually part of this year's 2012, actually this
all
year.
right, okay.
Last year's road program. We waited for the completion of the water main project, which at this time is substantially complete. We let the trenches settle for a little while, and then we'll do the mill and overlay.
Right. Okay.
They seem to be concentrating on Mark Drive right now.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Okay. Is there a motion then to approve
The
the engineer's report? I'm looking for the date here. Oops, sorry. For it's the February engineering report, which is dated March 15th, 2013. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, so that brings up the bill list, and we're looking at bills in the amount this month of $1,633,083.28. Of that, 1.6 million, about 1.1 million is salary and benefits, and then we have a couple other, obviously the senior center project, the tennis court project, I believe, is on there. So those are pretty big ticket items. Okay, almost 82,000 for the senior center, about 45,000 for the tennis courts, 18,000 for computer networks and upgrades, salt for the roads, about 19,000, a little over 19,000. For fuel, about 36,000, okay, which is more than we paid in legal fees. As you can see, Mr. Clark can't even afford a sport coat to bring with him. Comments or questions on the bill list? Mr. Galloway?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
No.
Mr. Dents?
No questions or comments.
Mr. Rocco?
I have none.
Okay. All right, is there a motion then to approve the bill list in the amount of $1,633,083.28?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, executive session. We don't have a need for an executive session. And that brings us to manager comment. And again, Mrs. Rukoff sitting in for Mr. Gray, who is at a conference at Penn State. Any issues for manager comment?
Yes, I have 2 items. The first is a letter of extension. Michael Connor of Stantec, sent a letter dated March 11th, 2013, regarding land development application of Area Health at 131 Lincoln Highway. He's requesting an extension on the project until March 31st, 2013. The board is asked to consider granting an extension at this time.
All right. Okay, comments or questions?
No.
Is there a motion to grant the letter of extension to Area Health until May 31st of 2013?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
March. It's till March 31st.
They only want extensions.
What's the date I saw?
May?
Yeah, it
Pete
says
has-
through.
Sorry, Mr.
Through.
Gray's notes say March 31st, but you're
Gotcha.
absolutely right.
Okay.
Pete never did it like that.
Terrible. That's in his handwriting. I'm going to call him up. The second item is for an escrow release. A letter from Jim Sullivan from T&M dated March 12th regarding an escrow release number 1 for air products and chemicals. The amount is $760,938.20. The board is asked to consider this release of escrow.
Okay. All right, so this is a project that's obviously complete, and so escrow being released. Any comments or questions, Mr. Sullivan?
No.
Yeah.
Mr. Rocco?
It seems to be a lot of money. How big was the project?
I'm sorry?
It's a lot of money, $760,000?
Yes.
How big was the project?
Fairly large. It's been completed.
Thank you. What we do without him?
Big.
It was mostly equipment, and equipment was very expensive. And we escrowed for everything that they did.
Okay, because I've never seen an escrow, I don't recall seeing an escrow that big.
It's typical of a large facility like that.
Okay.
AE Polysilicon had, over a couple $1 million in escrow for a project like that.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Is the escrow for projects like that based on a percentage of the overall project, or?
Not necessarily. It's usually based on the work that's required. We do a cost estimate. The engineer does a cost estimate. We approve it, make changes to it, and then we can settle on an amount that must be escrowed to ensure completion of the project.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions?
No.
All right, is there a motion to authorize the release, escrow release number 1 for air products and chemicals in the amount of $938.20?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Anything else? That's it? Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right, we're up to board comment. We'll begin, see with Mr. Snipes maybe this time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. One thing I'd like to say is many people in the community are aware of an incident that happened at Dick's Sporting Goods in the past couple days. It was actually a suicide committed in the bathroom of the store. And I just wanted to acknowledge any emergency personnel, police, and of course the staff in the store who had to deal with that tragic situation. And of course, anyone else who was in the store who had to deal with it, but particularly from the perspective of our board for our personnel here in the township, I'm sure it was a very hard situation to have to deal with in the unfolding of it, and then in the afterwards, after the death had occurred. I had an experience with township personnel here, police, dealing with a death, and I was very impressed by the respectful way that they dealt with the whole situation. And it's got to be hard over time to encounter these things, you know, a number of times over time in your job as a emergency worker or police. So I just want to acknowledge, and maybe hopefully for the whole board, that we respect the work they do. We know how difficult it is, and especially in that kind of situation, not just level heads, but also sensitivity for what people are experiencing emotionally is crucial. I also wanted to point out that what happened is unfortunately very common in our country. There are probably 16 to 17,000 suicides by handgun a year in this country. And that's something that's a little bit lost in our conversation about handguns these days, or about gun violence. And so I wanted to bring it up. There needs to be a larger conversation. We talk about mental illness, but certainly depression leading to, we think about it in terms of large acts that happen, tragedies that happen that we can all think of in movie theaters and schools, but these are quieter, that are usually borne by the family. These types of suicide situations are borne by families mostly and friends. And whatever conversation we can begin to have about that kind of situation, which we may not think about as mental illness, but obviously there's at least depression involved. We need to be aware of each other more, reaching out to each other. I don't know what policy, I know we're going to have a long conversation ongoing about the availability of weapons and mental state, and this is something certainly that in the issue of suicide, which personally has touched me and my family, that we need to really work on as a society. But in bringing it up, I really wanted to thank township personnel. Pete Gray was contacting us in the middle of the night about the situation, keeping us informed, and then of course police and emergency personnel that stepped in to take care of really a horrifying situation, I think did a great job. So I wanted to acknowledge them, and hope we don't have to do it again, hope they don't have to do it again. And unfortunately, it looks like, given the statistics, we may have to, and it's right here in our own community, so we need to deal with it. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Dents?
I have no comment tonight.
Okay. Mr. Galloway?
Yes, on a better note than the tragedy, I have the good fortune of being involved with that parade that goes on each year down New Falls Road, the Bucks County St. Patrick's Day Parade, and we completed our 25th year. There was a lot of volunteers involved. Far too many to name, but well over 100 people who worked throughout the year to help to bring it off. We had upwards of 2,000 marchers that day who did show up in the weather. The first hour of the snow was very pleasant, and after that, well, things got the way they got. But as I discussed earlier with Mr. Harvey, a completed parade is a good parade. And I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. We had a lot of spectators come out. They braved the weather, and they enjoyed themselves. And they've emailed and Facebooked us on the committee and expressed their appreciation. And we can't say anything but that we look forward again to putting on our 26th next year. And thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to echo a couple of comments. First, I wanted to thank Mr. Galloway publicly as the head of the Parade Commission for all the work he put in, over the past year, really just getting everything to go. And I'm sure looking at the weather, as I was looking at the weather last week, leading up to Saturday, wondering, what's it going to be like, because it was sort of back and forth. But yeah, thank you very much for all the work you do and the rest of your committee. Really wonderful job.
Thank you.
So. Echo Mr. Snipes' comments about the first responders, not only from Falls, but also the response team that was called in, pulls officers from different communities in Lower Bucks County. And so obviously our officers taking the lead being in Falls, but also the other officers who were there, whether it was directing traffic or whether they were actually participating in trying to bring a peaceful end to that. And obviously it could have been much worse. Certainly it's a tragedy for the gentleman involved that who obviously had serious issues that went unresolved, and he obviously decided to sort of resolve themselves, which again is sad, but certainly could have been worse. And so we thank God that it wasn't. The unfortunately another tragedy just a day later, a fire at in Penwood Crossing, which claimed the life of a gentleman who was not able to basically get out of his trap by the fire, was not able to escape from his home. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends on that loss. And I know the fire, I think the cause is still under investigation. We don't quite know at this point, what caused it, but certainly it helps to have working smoke detectors in the home. It helps to have some kind of plan of escape. Just discuss it with your family, and always better to be prepared. I want to congratulate Ms. Rukoff, now that, her being here, on achieving a certificate or being awarded a certificate of achievement in financial reporting. So it goes to all the hard work she and her staff do here at the township in terms of keeping the books and running this building. Mr. Gray, of course, also received this award when he was there. This is the 15th consecutive year that Falls Township's received this award, something to be very, very proud of. So thank you very much for all the work you and the rest of your staff does. A few other things in terms of, I guess, business. We did get a letter of interest from Mr. Bill Renson, who had been a member of our Cable Advisory Board, left in January, but has, I guess, reconsidered and has decided that he would like to go back on that board. It was a board he was on for a long time, and I know he was a valuable member of that board, and I think he can continue to be a valuable member of that board. And so I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Renson to I think there's one seat remaining, one full term remaining on that board. One full open seat, I should say, open on that board. So I'll make a motion to appoint him to that. If there is a second.
Seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. So Mr. Rukoff, make sure that he does get notification of that. And also another point of business, our land development attorney, Flager & Yaki, has officially sort of changed their name and title, so we have to reflect that. They're now being known as Flager & Associates. We have to, is there a motion for that effect, I guess, to make it official? Do we need to do that officially?
I believe that the last one or two times this has come up, we have made a motion to reappoint or to appoint the firm of Flager & Associates as the land development attorney, or whatever firm we were changing from, because it is a different entity than you appointed in January.
Right. All right, then I'll make a motion to appoint Flager & Associates as the land development attorneys for Falls Township at the fees stated in their letter, which was just for this year, basically. I think it was in December their letter came in. So that's the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, and finally, I want to wish a happy Easter and a happy Passover to the residents of Falls Township. It's for about a week or so away from that time period. Hopefully, spring will actually be here. I've had sort of an interesting interesting month of March, but. Thank all the people here at the Township Building for all their work in putting this together. Professionals, as you saw with the plan that we had for the townhomes. This was 2 years in the making and a lot of work going into it. Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Clark and Ms. Gallagher and Mr. Bennett and the fire marshal, all kinds of involvement from all kinds of people to make it happen. So we appreciate all your work, and obviously the Police Pension Commission for their work, and Mrs. Rukoff for her work in terms of that issue, or those two agenda items, and also for Ms. Rukoff stepping in tonight. Appreciate you giving us your time. And for all the members of the public who came out and gave us their ideas and their input, we appreciate your voices as well. With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.